on all these issues which are critical. Let's go straight to our male panel. Joining us is John Barilaro, the Deputy Premier of New South Wales, and Chris Minns, the newly minted Labor leader. Could I just say to you first, a story just in to you, John Barilaro. Victor Dominello has been released from quarantine, and now all sorts of suggestions that he was let out last Saturday. He shouldn't have been let out. There have been mistakes made. How can people, Deputy Premier, take all you lot seriously?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. And tonight, the news just now that Victor Dominello has been reclassified as a close contact again in itself makes you wonder. And, you know, I've made comments today which hasn't pleased some of my colleagues, but, you know, I'm not going to stand aside and pretend that these inconsistencies are acceptable. And I've called it out, and the public has every right to know why.
Well, look, why don't you, Barra, now listen, why don't you call this one out? Because apart from Victor Dominello, I mean, and I know New South Wales Health apologised, there was an error, acknowledges and all that sort of stuff. But let's forget Dominello for a moment. I mean, at the end of the day, wondering what is going on. How is it that the New South Wales Premier last Tuesday night was in the same room as the New South Wales Agriculture Minister, Adam Marshall, who later tested positive coronavirus, standing over 2 metres away, and yet she's got the luxury of being deemed a casual contact? Others from the same event were forced to isolate. Is there one rule for her and another for the people of New South Wales?
Well, Alan, I was at that event, and Gladys came in through the back of the room. I escorted her to the stage. She spoke for 15 minutes and took questions, and then she left. In my view, there was no contact with Mr. Marshall, nowhere near it. Actually, she was probably more like 5 to 10 metres away from Adam at any one time. Yeah.
Barra, if I can interrupt you. New South Wales Health recently ordered anyone who had merely stood inside a David Jones department store where a positive case had been identified, they were ordered to isolate. And the parliamentary officials, your officials, issued a statement last Thursday afternoon to all MPs that anyone who had contact of any kind with Marshall should self-isolate, quote, until further advice. Didn't the statement say that that would include speaking directly to the member, being in the room with the member, passing the member in a corridor, sharing a lift, or otherwise being in close proximity to the member? I'm going to ring Chris Minns here. Can you come in here, Chris Minns, the Labor Party Alternative Premier? Gladys Berejiklian had spent ample time near or around Adam Marshall during the day. A joint party room meeting of Liberal and National Party MPs in the morning. Question time in the afternoon. Parliamentary officials issued a statement that all MPs who had contact of any kind with Marshall should self-isolate. And the statement said that would include speaking directly to the member, Gladys guilty, because she was running the party room meeting, being in a common room with the member, Gladys guilty, being in close proximity to the member, Gladys guilty. Chris Minns, how could she then be deemed by Dr. Chant and her medical mates on their own rules to be a casual contact, not needing to self-isolate?
Well, Alan, I don't know. I mean, I didn't follow her around that day. I'm not sure what the circumstances were, how close she was to Adam Marshall or somebody else. I know I was contacted by contact tracers late at night on the Thursday, and they asked me a series of questions about my proximity to Adam Marshall and other people who potentially could have disease.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's not about close proximity. The state parliamentary officials issued an edict. If you were in the same room, she was in the same room. These are their own rules. I mean, the lockdown is supposed to prevent transmission. Is the government telling the people of New South Wales that we're locking down because the virus can go from one person to the other, but it miraculously stops short of Gladys? Barry, what do you say to that?
Sorry.
Well, Alan, again, you know, like the initial advice was that people had to take caution. The Premier was then interviewed that morning, went through the facts, and therefore a casual classification. And I actually support that. I actually think it's right that she was classified in a casual way because I saw with my own eyes the interaction in that room. Now, I've been judged to go into isolation. No, but I've been judged to go into isolation not because of my attendance at the National Party event, because I was about 10 metres away from Adam. It's because I had a 2 to 3 minute interaction in my office with about a 2 to 3 metre gap. And that's what I'm in isolation for.
But see, Barra, can I say to you both, you're the deputy, we've got a leader beside you. Are you asking the public watching you tonight to seriously believe that the virus, because all this isolation is to prevent transmission, mind you, I don't agree with all that crap, but nonetheless, this is the rules, that they're suggesting the virus doesn't travel beyond 1.5 metres, that the virus sees someone just over 2 metres away and decides not to infect that person. That's what you are telling us. And if that is true, the virus does stop. Why are we in lockdown?
Well, Alan, we know for a fact, we don't know exactly what the virus does. And the truth is, if you look at the dinner that Adam Marshall went to with three of his colleagues don't have COVID today.
But the Premier was in the same room as this bloke. The Premier was 1.5 metres away from the bloke. In the same rooms. Those are the rules. I mean, people are tired of politicians, Barra, calling the shots without any debate, no consultation, and the rules for the politicians are different from those for the public. I mean, three of your colleagues, Khan and Cook and Franklin, grabbed a pizza in the suburb of Paddington, where Paddington had been named a red zone by the government, of which they're a member. I mean, Barnaby Joyce got fined $200 for not wearing a mask. Why weren't these blokes fined?
Well, they're not fined because they did nothing wrong. Just because it's a hotspot, it just means you've got to be taking precaution. And they would have done that, and three of them didn't get the virus. And I just want to pull you back. Gladys was more than 1.5 metres. She was at least 10 metres away from Adam in that room.
She was in the same room. She was in the same room, and those are your rules. She spoke in the room. Those are your rules issued to all members of Parliament by parliamentary officials. Chris Minns, do you understand the emotional damage being done to people by relentlessly resorting to lockdown? And have you seen the medical advice, you're the alternative Premier, which justifies this?
Well, look, of course, if the government's making decisions based on medical advice, then we'll support it. I've spoken to gym owners and businesses all day today in my own electorate looking for outside approvals to keep their businesses going. I think that many of them are frustrated about the situation. Of course they are, but many people I speak to, and I know a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but if we have a mass outbreak like in Russia or India, they'll be permanently ruinous. Sure, the government won't tell you to stay home. Sure, the government won't tell you to stay home, but people will voluntarily stay home if there's an uncontrolled disease that's ripping through the population.
Chris, India is part of the world. And in the world, 99.6% of all cases are mild. Barra, look, just before we go, businesses are out there buying disposable masks, a pack of 50 disposable masks for their staff. How much should they pay?
Well, I wouldn't know what the price would be for a mask at the moment. There's plenty of masks about. I don't know, a pack of 50, $5, $10.
Chris, how much should they pay?
Well, I mean, not much. But I think I saw a pack of 20 for $10 at Superbarn the other day.
Yeah, OK. You go to the supermarket now, and this is the poor bloody public out there, a pack of 50 disposable, wear them and chuck them away, $41. Barra, fair dinkum.
Yeah, that's not fair. And you're right. That's not fair. That's not right. That's not right.
And what about dobbing people in? Dobbing people. The Deputy Police Commissioner is telling people, hey, dob them in if you find an Australian. Yes or no, Chris? Is that un-Australian?
Look, I think if it's an honest mistake and an honest citizen's just trying to do the right thing and mistakenly fails, and I think probably the right thing to do is say to your neighbour, hey, you've forgotten to put your mask on. I think if it's a willful breach, a demonstration, or someone's trying to deliberately put the public in danger, then that's a different story.
Barra, are you part of a government which encourages people to snitch on their neighbours?
I think, look, Chris answered it really, really well. And at the end of the day, we got through the first part of this COVID pandemic of the 18 months by sticking together. We should support each other. We encourage each other. And if someone makes an error, you just try and advise them and correct them. But, I'm not into dobbing anybody in.
All right, well, look, I'll say to you both, I'm wondering if you can go back to the party room and share with them some of the world expert advice which is opposed to lockdowns, the World Health Organization and others, so that they can have access, the public can have access to all the information, not just the stuff that you people want to feed them. But thank you both for your time. We're out of time. All the best. It's good of you to join us, and we'll see you next week.